Welcome to BigTent USA. Thanks for joining. My name is Kim Churls, and I'm an advisor at BigTent, and I'm super happy to host today's discussion with Mandara Meyers and Tia Howard of the States Project. At BigTent USA, we put democracy over partisanship, really important in these days. What started as 10 women around a kitchen table in 2020 is now a movement, 20,000 people strong, all passionate about civic participation. You can find all sorts of upcoming events in the newsletter, on social media, visit our website to RSVP. There are 98 days until the election, so join us in doing something. There are 3 things off the bat that you can find on the website to dive into right now. There's a do something page for actions to take, no matter your level of civic participation. There is the Project 2025 page to learn how the plan would impact you and your family. Spoiler alert, horrifically. And there is a talking points tool to help master those meaningful conversations we're all trying to have with our networks on today's issues. So please share all of this info with your friends. Join us to make a difference. I'm really thrilled to introduce our guest today. I have become a huge fan of the States Project over the last few years, pretty much ever since I first heard about what they do. If you care about the presidential race, if you care about House and Senate races, if you care about protecting the vote, abortion access, gun safety, book bans, all the things, then we care about the states. And the States Project is our guide in knowing where that power is and how to really support it. So today we're going to hear about their electoral and policy work, as well as how the giving circles fuel the work in the states. By way of introduction, Tia Howard is Senior Manager of Recruitment with the Giving Circles. Tia began her career working on the fundraising side of several political campaigns at the national and state levels. Just prior to joining the States Project, Tia worked to uplift the voices of women of color, immigrants, and care workers with the National Domestic Workers Alliance and Care in Action. Tia is an alumna of American University School of International Service and Northeastern University School of Public Policy and Urban Affairs. Mandara Meyers has served as Chief Programs Officer at the States Project since 2020, driving the strategy and expansion of the States Project's electoral and policy work. Previously, Mandara was a government relations attorney, developed hundreds of state and local political leaders at the Center for Progressive Leadership, oversaw programming for 40,000 members as a vice president at Leadership for Educational Equity, and led a foundation focused on leadership. An alumna of Swarthmore College and the University of Pennsylvania Law School, Mandara started her career as a Coro Fellow in Public Affairs. Long list of accomplishments there for both Mandara and Tia. So welcome to BigTent, Tia, Mandara. Mandara, I think I'm turning it to you now.
You are. Thank you so much, Kim, and shout out to Kitty and Susan and the BigTent team for the opportunity to join you all today. I'm really excited to be here and to have this important conversation and in this moment. And I will also just say a quick shout out. I saw, I think, at least half of our TSP states listed in the chat. So I saw Michigan, Minnesota, Kansas, North Carolina. So love having folks here on this call who are living and being impacted by the work that we're doing. It touches on all of us, as we will discuss, but so exciting to have folks in our states. So I'm going to do a big picture overview first of what we do at the States Project, why we believe this focus on state legislatures is so critically important, even in the middle of a presidential election year that is turning out to be an even wilder ride than we might have thought. So we'll talk more about what we do at the States Project, why this work is so critical if you care about protecting our democracy, if you care about protecting people's rights at every level. And then my colleague Tia will pick up and talk a little bit more about the model of our giving circles and opportunities to get involved in the power of that community. So I will just start off by stating the obvious. A lot's changed in the last couple of weeks, right? We were already expecting this to be a bit of an unusual election year. But I think one thing we can now say for certain is that chaos is a bit of the norm, or becoming the norm, as we head into November. What we believe and what we have seen to be true at the States Project is that the future of our country, our democracy, no matter who is president, can be meaningfully impacted if we secure power where it is on the line in state legislative races this November. And again, that's really what we're going to talk about today. And we do this work because we believe, and again, have seen over and over again, that we can have a bigger impact in state legislatures than any other part of politics. You can help determine which states have access to abortion, access to clean water, access for kids to get free school meals, which states accelerate a destruction of our democratic norms and which fight to protect them. All of that is being done at the state legislative level, and is why it is so important to spend a tiny portion of our energy, even in a moment where, again, there's so much new excitement and momentum at the top of the ticket, to be thinking about and focusing on what's happening in the states. And briefly, I'll just say, you'll hear us talk about this a fair amount today. We think about states as an insurance policy for our democracy. In the days after the election, and again, I expect that we are now heading towards a relatively close presidential election. What that means is that if we have contested elections, if we have right-wing lawmakers trying to steal the presidency in the days that follow the election, the lawmakers who we are working with in key states across the country right now, states like Pennsylvania, New Hampshire, Nevada, those lawmakers may be called on to secure a valid election result and to prevent the right wing from potentially stealing the presidency. And again, I believe with Kamala Harris as our presumptive nominee at the top of the ticket, given the level of racism and misogyny that we have seen from the right wing, they are not going to go down easily, right? So if we are looking at contested election results, if we're looking at close presidential election results, state lawmakers in those key swing states are really going to be at the front lines of ensuring that their election results get certified, that the popular vote reflects what actually happens in their states, and that we can protect the presidency. And again, we all know that if we are looking at 4 more years of a right-wing administration, pro-democracy state legislatures become that final front line for protecting the things that we care about, for protecting representative democracy, personal freedoms, effective government, and making sure that states can continue to really be on the front line of protecting people against the most extreme of the right-wing policies. So that's what we do at the States Project. We work to build power in state legislatures and to work with lawmakers who are committed to protecting democracy, who are committed to protecting people's personal freedoms, to ensure that they have the power to advance policies that are really going to improve people's lives. So I want to just talk for a moment about how we do this work, and just a quick tech check here. Perfect. Great. We're going to go to our third slide here as those slides are coming up. Great. So again, we do this work with state lawmakers because we believe that they are the strongest force for change in this country. And that again, for too long, we have not invested as much as we need to at the state legislative level. So the States Project is the only national organization that is hyper-focused both on winning state legislative power and on helping state lawmakers to govern effectively. So this is what we call our virtuous cycle, right? We believe that politics and policy are inextricably linked. That part of how, when we win, when we have better electoral outcomes, we then need to support and to see state lawmakers passing good policies that show that they are acting on those promises they made when they ran, that they are delivering on their commitments, and that those good policies, in turn, voters notice, they can see the ways in which their lives are being positively impacted and improved, and they want to see more of that. So they will vote to bring those folks back. So we're constantly working with lawmakers at the state level to reinforce this virtuous cycle, to make sure that we are building more power so lawmakers can get more policies passed that make people's lives better. That's really our goal for the electoral work. And then to help state lawmakers through our policy work to make as much progress as they can with the power that they have in advancing policies that are going to improve people's lives. So this virtuous cycle for us, these are our two mutually reinforcing programs that help to build and hold power and equip the most important lawmakers in our country with policies that can actually defend our democracy, protect personal freedoms, and improve lives. And we do this through a framework that we call our America's Goals framework. I'm not going to spend as much time on this, but for anyone who's interested, this is on our website at at statesproject.org. This is really what we're fighting for. And again, the reason that I offer it here in the context of this big tent is that this is not a partisan agenda. This is a common sense agenda based on a set of broadly shared values. We have pulled this over and over again. We've done focus groups. And what we find is that these are broadly popular ideas. When you ask people if they support these goal areas, over 91% of people across all parties say that these are the right set of values. So we are not working on the most progressive or the most moderate agenda. We're working on common sense ideas that we know most people believe would make their lives better, would make their communities stronger. This is what we're helping lawmakers to fight for every day in their communities. Okay, so I'm going to briefly talk about how we do it. I'm going to talk a little bit about our political work or our electoral work, and then a little bit about our policy work. And then we will have some time again, both to go to Tia to hear more about the giving circles and to get some questions, as I know there are some popping in the chat already. So to start with our electoral work, in 2022, TSP, the States Project, did an unprecedented level of investment in state legislative races, which meant that we were by far the largest funder in the states where we worked. In Arizona, we spent 30 times the next largest giver. In Pennsylvania, to flip the Pennsylvania House, we spent 80 times the next largest group. And in Michigan, 8 times the next largest contributor. And I share that only to give you a sense of the scale at which we are working here. So we know that our investment in 2022 fueled unprecedented new power in states like Michigan, Minnesota, the Pennsylvania House. And an external evaluation that year, an independent analysis done of our program, found that the program districts where we were operating were estimated to have nearly a 6 percentage point increase in candidate vote margin compared to match control districts. So the states where we invested in, the districts where we invested, made a difference. And we'll talk about which states those are for 2024 in just a moment. So again, this year, I'll talk about where, but I want to talk first about what. So the way that we run this program, what we call our core electoral program, is first that we actually evaluate every single chamber in the country, all 99 of them, to see where our intervention can help to win or defend a meaningful threshold for governing power. That obviously can be protecting or winning a majority, but sometimes that also looks like breaking or achieving a supermajority. And then we invest in every potential tipping point district that we need to hold or win in order to meet our goals. We then use a set of really innovative tactics that we've designed that are specifically focused on moving vote share and work with campaigns in these states to implement and to test them, again, with the resources to do so. And we spend over 90% of our dollars on the coordinated side, which means we're working directly with campaigns to provide strategic advice, partnership, and spending oversight to ensure that over 90% of the dollars that they are spending in their budgets are based on evidence-based tactics that can make the biggest difference in state legislative campaigns. So for those of you who are waiting for the big reveal, these are the states that we're focusing on during the 23-24 cycle. Again, different kinds of goals. Some of these states are states where we're defending the power that we won in 2022. That's states like Minnesota, Michigan, Pennsylvania. In other states, we're working to flip. Arizona, Wisconsin are 2 real opportunities for flips this year. And then in other states, again, we're focusing on supermajorities or ways to ensure that lawmakers have as much power to either prevent some of the worst policies from being passed or to actually advance policies that are currently, for example, being blocked by a right-wing governor in states like Nevada. So happy to answer questions on this one as we go, but this is a snapshot of the states where we're investing this year after a really deliberate process to see where our investments and support from the states project can make the biggest difference. And again, I spoke a little bit already to some of the innovative tactics that we use. This is a really important part of our work, is that we are trying to help ensure that candidates are spending time where it can make the biggest difference. So we design really innovative tactics to help move vote share and then work with campaigns to help execute them. Two that I'll just speak to briefly here. One is a door knocking challenge that we have started. So we know multiple studies have shown that candidates themselves knocking on doors is the best way to change voters' minds and to net votes. So we have started a signature door knocking challenge, which allows us to get state legislative candidates out knocking on doors and meeting and talking to voters on the doors by incentivizing them to knock those doors through increased candidate contributions. What that means is that candidates who knock the most doors every month receive large contributions for winning the door knocking challenge, and it becomes a competition. Every candidate who hits their goal splits a part of the contributions that month. And what this means is that we can help candidates spend less time making calls to fundraise and more time actually out on the doors talking to voters in their districts. The one other that I'll highlight quickly is our local press project. This provides funding and expertise so that campaigns have media specialists focused on helping them generate local press stories. And this, again, can make a really big difference in competitive state legislative elections. Again, we're often talking about elections here that are being decided by dozens of votes. And so helping candidates get local press can make a big difference. What we saw when we tested this in 2022 with a randomly controlled trial is that on average, candidates who participated in this program generated 9 additional media stories or more than 1 additional news story a week. So again, going to reputable press, people often trust their local news, feel a sense of connection to that, and helping get more positive stories placed about candidates. And again, what we're working towards is really helping our candidates to layer these tactics. So they're not focusing all of their resources on just one. They're using every tactic to the extent possible to make the biggest difference. And what this means is that we're getting closer to having state legislative campaigns, which for years have been under-resourced and understaffed, run more like the best congressional campaigns. So really trying to elevate how these campaigns are operating and the difference we can make. So I want to just talk a little bit about what this actually means and leads to. One thing that we are especially excited about is that state legislative chambers where we have helped to build or maintain power are also increasing representation and getting more diverse. There are now 4 Black lawmakers leading legislative chambers that the States Project has helped to work in over the past couple of cycles: Maine, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Virginia. And if we go to the next slide, what you'll see is that as we build majorities, as we increase power, we're also really changing who is at the table. So these are tiny, tiny, tiny little dots, I know, on all of your screens. But what we see, I'll just highlight a couple of them here. The Virginia House majority, when that flipped, or excuse me, when we held power in the House majority, went from 21% women in the majority to 53% women, right? More than doubled. We see that across a number of these states. Also states where the percentage of people of color serving in the majority, I'm going to look at the Michigan Senate here as one example, went from 0% lawmakers who identified as people of color serving in the majority when that was under right-wing control, to now 35% people of color serving in that majority chamber in the Michigan Senate. We're really proud of this, and we believe this matters because, again, we're changing who is making decisions, right? Who is representing, who has the power to advance policies, and policies that, again, represent a larger, more diverse, more representative share of those communities. So really exciting results here. I want to turn just for a couple of minutes to our policy work, and then again, we'll get more into our giving circles and how everyone can get involved with this work. So again, all of this work is to build power, to ensure that we have as much power in state legislative chambers as possible. But the work doesn't stop once we help people get elected or once we flip a chamber. That really is where the work starts in terms of ensuring that we're using the power that we have to help lawmakers advance policies that are going to truly improve people's lives. So there are three key ways that we work with lawmakers. The first is really identifying some of the strongest lawmakers in every chamber that we work in across the country and building those relationships so that we're a constant source of support. State lawmakers, again, are usually doing this as a part-time job. They often don't have full-time staff. They often don't come from a background where they know everything there is to know about the thousands of bills that they're going to be expected to vote on or even to introduce themselves during the legislative session. So we are really trying to equip them with the tools, the resources, the policy ideas. We're trying to fill all of those gaps to help these incredibly important policymakers have the information, the tools, the ideas, the data to make really informed, good decisions and pass good policies on behalf of people. And then a key part of this work is also making sure, most people don't even know who their state lawmaker is, let alone the ways in which their state lawmakers are working to make a difference in their lives. So we spent a lot of time helping lawmakers actually get press, use social media, organize town halls, bring their constituents together to talk about the work that they're doing and to help everyday people understand the difference that it makes to have someone who is committed to protecting democracy, committed to protecting personal freedoms, representing them, and what that can look like. And we can go to the next slide. I'll just share a couple of highlights here. Again, what we saw after 2022 when we had some of these incredible results. So we got new trifectas, as our Michiganders and Minnesotans in the room today know. When we won those new trifectas in 2022, we saw in the first month of 2023, that first month of new legislative sessions, Michigan and Minnesota passed more bills in 1 month than the previous 6 legislative sessions combined. Last year, Congress passed 30 policies. Michigan enacted 321. So again, if you want to talk about where change is happening, where we're seeing real momentum, it is in the states. We are seeing incredible progress on everything from abortion access to gun violence prevention, to clean energy, clean air and water, free school meals, prescription drug affordability, paid family leave. These are all issues that the new majorities we helped to elect in 2022 went immediately to work on in 2023. And we've just seen phenomenal results from lawmakers with those new trifectas passing policies at a breakneck speed. All right, and a few testimonials here. Again, really proud of the level of relationships that we've been able to build with some of these strongest lawmakers in states across the country. You can see a few highlights here from states from Arizona to Michigan to Minnesota and Pennsylvania. But we are working in really close partnership and have established really strong relationships with lawmakers in each of these states to ensure that as they are building their agenda, focusing on what they can get done, they are working with us as close partners, and we're able to provide them the support that we can. Okay, my last piece, and then we will move on to Tia. So again, I've shared lots of the positives, right? What we've seen as the hopeful vision when we build more power, what we can expect in states like Michigan and Minnesota. I want to come back just for a moment to, again, the threat that we believe state legislatures still present as we head towards November. So the first thing I want to say is, again, I actually believe that with Kamala Harris as the likely nominee, the right wing is going to be even more mobilized and even more aggressive, both in trying to find right-wing state lawmakers who are willing to try to create claims of fraud, to try to steal the election at the state legislative level, and to use every tactic available to them. So again, while we may have a lot of momentum around who is going to be at the top of the ticket, there also are still real risks to ensuring that election results get certified in key swing states, and that the popular vote, the vote of the people, does actually get certified and becomes the outcome. So I just want to remind folks quickly what is at stake here. What we saw in 2020 is that the right wing went to right-wing state lawmakers and tried to steal the election in states like Michigan. We sounded the alarm starting back in 2020 that right-wing majority state legislatures posed a huge threat to our democracy. And what we saw is not only that state legislatures were a key path for attempting to steal the results in 2020, but that culminated, of course, in the January 6th attacks at our nation's capital. So we think we just can't take our eyes off of this. There again, we can go to the next slide. There have been some positive improvements and changes to both federal election law and Supreme Court decisions that we think give us some assurance heading into this election cycle, but again, not enough. So what we know is that there is new federal law in place, the Electoral Count Reform Act, that lays out how every state should be certifying the election results. We also have the decision from Moore v. Harper that states don't have absolute power. But again, what we expect to see here is contested election results and litigation. Litigation gets particularly tricky because litigation in many of the states that we are active in means that right-wing controlled Supreme Courts at the state level and at the federal level may become the decision makers. So again, these slides just lay out some of the specific threats. What I really want to emphasize is that where these new federal laws intersect with state laws, there are still real risks to a free and fair presidential election in states like Pennsylvania, New Hampshire, and Nevada, where lawmakers elected this November can actually take office before the election results get certified. And we believe that these majorities could work to either ensure timely election results or to create the kinds of delays and chaos that could discredit election results and mean that this election gets decided by the courts. So all of this is to say, again, if you care about protecting the presidency, if you care about seeing a free and fair election, you have to care about what's happening in states like Pennsylvania, New Hampshire, Nevada, and others this November, because the outcome of state legislative elections this November could still impact who is in power after the election. So I have already gone way over my time. I'm going to stop there and turn things over to my colleague Tia. I know there were many questions coming in, so I'll get caught up with those and look forward to answering some of them in a few minutes.
Thank you all so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. So I do want to take a sort of a step back and talk about the bigger picture that Mandara had mentioned. So the state legislative level is sort of a very different level from the federal level. So the job of being a state lawmaker is often a part-time job in many states, and lawmakers might not have the resources to be able to hire staff. And that's just on the official side. So I come to this work from campaign land, but I also come to this work as a former state legislative staffer. I used to work in the Massachusetts State Senate. And what I found there was just how important the state legislative level is to how we all live our daily lives. I had one constituent in particular who had called the office and had been looking to get on, in Massachusetts, it's called Mass Health. It's also known as Medicaid. And she didn't have a stable address. She had a PO box and she was having trouble navigating the system. So she called me and I called Mass Health, and we had a three-way call where we walked her through how to fill out the forms, how to go through the process. And she called me 3 days after that phone call and told me that she received her Mass Health card in the mail. And it was life-changing for her because she hadn't gone to the doctor in years. And so I know when we think about sort of healthcare, we tend to think about the federal level. But the thing is that every issue that we care about, from affordable quality healthcare to reproductive freedom, to climate change, to education. 90% of education funding happens at the state level, not the federal level. To the roads and the sidewalks that we use to get to work every day, it's all decided in state legislatures. And when we think about elections in this country, we tend to think about the presidential or the big Senate races, where the candidates, fly all around the country and they hold big rallies. But the thing is that the investment that happens at the top of the ticket doesn't always make its way down to the state ledge level. But a little investment goes a very long way at the state ledge level. The districts are smaller than a congressional district. A congressional district encompasses, on average, 761,000 people. A state ledge district in New Hampshire, for example, can encompass as little as 3,000 people. A state ledge house district in Pennsylvania might be about 64,000. And it's often cheaper to flip an entire state chamber than it is to win a single competitive congressional district. Congressional districts can cost in the tens of millions of dollars, but when we're making an impact in state legislatures, we can do it for a fraction of the cost. And here's where giving circles come in. So giving circles actually helped to flip the Maine State Senate for about $140,000 in 2018. And when it comes to giving circles, the idea is really based on collective giving, and collective giving is central to our success. The idea of a giving circle has been around for a long time. It's particularly common in communities of color, where when someone is having sort of a big life event, if someone's going to college, if someone's getting married, folks in the community will give a little bit to the pot to help support that person's life event. And those little bits end up snowballing and becoming a much larger sum that can go on to help support this person in their life event. And here in the TSP community, we're using giving circles as a way to be able to support state legislative races. And in our community, giving circles are started by anyone and everyone. So nurses, teachers, moms, retired folks, people from all walks of life. None of us individually are the Koch brothers. We're not writing billion-dollar checks to politicians. But we can, little by little, get our friends and our families together and build an impactful total that can help to build power in the state chamber. Giving circle leaders are the folks that will do outreach to their friends and their networks. And people join a giving circle by making one meaningful donation to the giving circle for the year. There's no minimum or maximum. And giving circle leaders will set a goal that they set for the giving circle in terms of dollars that they'd like to raise and people that they'd like to bring into the circle. And once a giving circle reaches 25% of their goal, they can select up to 2 states to support from the list of states that we're in this year. And the best part is that giving circles is really a place for people to learn about government, learn about state government, and how much influence it really has over our lives. So typically the leaders and the members, for example, will come together to host a state selection event. So a state selection helps the giving circle to decide where they'd like to invest their sums this year. And the leaders will present state options to the giving circle members, and each member gets a vote in deciding the states that the giving circle will support this year. And that ends up being a really great conversation to explore the stakes, explore the opportunities in each state. And 100% of the amount that's raised by giving circles goes out of the door to support the state's project's electoral work in the states where we are. No overhead is taken out of the giving circles pot. And so let's take a look at the sort of impact that our community has had so far. So over the years, we got started in 2017 with this, and over the years, we've built a community that's nearly 20,000 members. We have over 800 giving circle leaders nationwide, and the average contribution for a giving circle is about $626. The median is around $100. And we've raised a total of $21 million since our start. And I also want to speak specifically to women. So our community is largely led by women. As you can see on the screen here, all of the dollars raised between 2020 and 2023, about 72% of those were from women. 82% of our leaders are women when it comes to giving circle leaders. And 75% of giving circle donors are women. And women historically have been underrepresented when it comes to political donations. And so this is a community of folks around the country who are passionate and focused on helping to make sure that state legislatures have what they need to be effective, and state legislative campaigns in particular have what they need to be effective as well. And so with that, I think we're going to close out here. So we'll bring back Mandara, but we are really uniquely equipped to be able to meet this moment. And when it comes to state legislatures in general, we know how to win, and we are the primary partner for state lawmakers committed to achieving the American promise.
Wow. I know a lot of us are walking through life right now feeling pretty excited and enthusiastic. I didn't know I could go another level up, but I could, and I can, and I have. Really fantastic. And we have a lot of questions that are terrific that we want to cover in our next, 20 minutes. So several questions on gerrymandering, the evil thing. And I love this question because full disclosure, I have a giving circles that some of us have started this year, and it's focused on Wisconsin. So I know that getting fairer maps in Wisconsin is directly what has led us to an opportunity there that the States Project identified and made us all aware of. So it's a great concrete example. But can you speak to, how do you overcome the excessive gerrymandering in some of these states? People have noted Ohio and North Carolina in particular.
Yes, I'll start this one and then welcome Tia if you want to chime in. Again, this is where the policy and the politics intersect. So one of the ways that we can reduce or get rid of gerrymandering is through changing how state legislatures draw legislative districts, right? That is within the power of state legislatures. So, for example, one of the model policies that we have that we work with state lawmakers across the country on is moving to an independent redistricting commission, because one of the reasons that has led to extreme gerrymandering has been a really partisan process for drawing district lines in the state. So, I have to be honest, there are not quick fixes to gerrymandering. There are changes to how the policy process works. And again, part of what it takes to be able to change something like moving to an independent redistricting commission is having more power at the state legislative level to pass a policy which can lead to that outcome. So that's one version of this, is we need to build enough power in states to be able to change policies. Another version of this is, again, I put this in the chat, but we are seeing in states like Ohio some momentum in getting ballot initiatives to change how to move again to an independent redistricting commission, which we believe could significantly reduce gerrymandering. So we are seeing a couple of different paths, but again, this is a problem that has been decades in the making, right? Gerrymandering is not a new phenomenon, and again, particularly at the state legislative level, part of what we're trying to undo is decades of really extreme gerrymandering that have led to maps like what existed in Wisconsin prior to this year. Again, this year we believe we could potentially pick up 15 seats in the Wisconsin Assembly with fairer maps. That's the difference that new fairer maps can make in a single legislative chamber.
I think that connects to another question someone posed in the chat around Florida, excuse me, and Ohio. We're purple states, now we're pretty red. And what are the goals around reversing that? And it seems tied to what you're just talking about. So if you could touch on that.
Sure. So, I will say again, when we do that 99 chamber analysis, so looking at every legislative chamber in the country, Nebraska is our only unicameral in the country, which is why it's 99 and not 100. Every other state has 2 chambers. Little trivia for the day. When we do that analysis, we're looking for a specific governing threshold that we can impact. That means that we are focused on states where there are more immediate or shorter term opportunities for the core electoral program that I described. So we are focused on states where, again, in this election cycle, we believe that we can make a difference in the outcome, whether that is flipping a chamber, protecting a chamber, breaking a supermajority, winning a supermajority. The states like Florida and Ohio are going to be multi-cycle plays. They are just going to require a few cycles of trying to build power slowly but surely. We will have redistricting in 2030, which will be another major opportunity in some of those states with population changes to see how that impacts things. So this is actually a hard one for me. I don't want to say we're not doing anything. I want to say what we're trying to do in those states is actually do more work on policy, on governance, on building towards a longer term play to try to get some power back in those states until a moment where we can actually see them flip back.
I wonder, Tia, if you could pick up on this, because there's a lot of chatter in the chat about how to start the giving circles, and I know you're answering it, but just maybe say that out loud to folks, and also connect it. There's a question about what are the top 3 legislature priorities, if you could pick 3. I don't know if you can, but that's a question that might connect to getting people fired up to start a giving circle or join one that's already happening.
Yes. And so in terms of how to start, so we have a form that we've linked in the chat. Go ahead and fill out that form. And what will happen next is you'll get an email from our team to sign up for a call with me, and we'll go through step by step how to start your giving circle. There's really 3 key steps: building a powerful list, writing that great email, and really crafting and connecting to your ask. Because more than anything, it's the story of what led you to want to be involved with state legislatures that's going to inspire the folks in your network. So this is the place. I know you all have group chats where people are talking about the election and talking about Kamala Harris. This is the place. This is the place where you can actually have an impact and be able to help to fuel very strategic work that's happening. And you get to be that connector for the people in your network of a place to take strategic impact, which I know a lot of people are looking to be able to do that this year. And it's also fun. It's you and your friends and your network and you all getting together and learning more about state legislatures and learning more about this level of government that has so much influence over our lives and actually taking part in it as well. And then in terms of sort of the second part of the question, so from a giving circles perspective, giving circles can select up to 2 states this year out of the 9 that we're working in electorally. The more popular states right now tend to be Arizona and Pennsylvania. But we're looking for support in all of the states that we're working in so far, especially in, Kansas and Nevada and New Hampshire, which tend to be states that in this big, giant sort of presidential election year, not a lot of folks know that state. There's actually a way to make a strategic impact in these smaller states as well. But really all of our states are key this year. And these are the ones that we believe that there's going to be a path to be impactful. And so we welcome giving circles looking to get involved from sort of everywhere.
It's really so interesting to deep dive into a particular state and really educate yourself. That's been my experience. There is a question about how the money gets distributed. Someone, I guess, while you guys were inspiring folks, gave to Kansas on your website and wondering, does it go directly there? And just if you can, reiterate that the money does go directly to who it goes to, and just talk about where the money gets distributed.
So 100% of the amount that's raised by giving circles goes out of the door to the states. And what that means is it goes to support our core electoral program in each state. And so as sort of we had mentioned in the call, what that means is there are key tactics like door knocking, ensuring that the candidate themselves goes out and knocks on doors. Giving circle dollars help to support that. Ensuring that there's a local press project where there are staffers helping to get more placements when it comes to news media and placements for candidates. That's something those are tactics that giving circle dollars help to support. They also help to support our work with our in-state partners as well, which happens to be really strategic when it comes to looking at this from a whole picture lens. So we all know about state parties, right? And state parties do lots of things. They do gubernatorials, they do congressionals, and sort of the things that happen up here, the investment doesn't always make its way down. And so when we go into a state, we aim to be able to work with the folks on the ground that are solely focused on state legislatures. Typically it's the caucus, but that's not the same in every state. Each state is unique. And so giving circle dollars go to help to support that holistic sort of view when it comes to state ledge. And then Mandara, if you have any additional.
This also tees up a question about the partners. There were a couple of folks put in something about States United, but also Galvanize, which is an organization many of us know very well, and wondering who your partners are on the, at the table in these various states with these various demographics. And also related to that, a question about if you can help to clarify the difference between what States Project does and the DLCC. Explain what the DLCC is and how you're different.
Sure. And I'm going to do the DL question first, and then I'll broaden it out to how we work with partners. And then again, Tia works with partners on the Giving Circle side too, so we can answer that in a few different ways. On the DLCC question, again, the DLCC is the party entity that focuses on state legislative races. So sometimes we have exactly the same priorities and invest in similar states. And sometimes we make different choices or see different opportunities. So one example I will give is in 2022, we were the only national group to invest any money in Nebraska. And we did that because, again, we knew in Nebraska that there was a potential supermajority. And for a variety of reasons, we felt a supermajority in Nebraska as we looked at a whole host of issues from democracy to abortion to other kinds of healthcare. We were concerned about what a supermajority in Nebraska could mean for people's lives. So we were the only national group that invested there. The DLCC did not contribute any money in Nebraska. We did that in part because we also knew, for anyone who is really, really paying attention to wonky state legislative news, there has been a push over the last couple of months. Nebraska has 2 electoral votes. There's been a push for Nebraska to move towards a winner-takes-all system by the right wing, which would make it easier to get 2 electoral votes from the state of Nebraska versus those votes being split, which is how that could likely work under the current model. Again, that's actually the risk that we saw in 2022 and why we believed that year investing to prevent a supermajority could be consequential as we looked again at a variety of issues and at this year's presidential election. So I give that example just to say, I think we can be a bit nimbler as a non-party entity. We can make different kinds of choices about where we see those opportunities, where we're thinking about something that may either be a longer term play or just something that's not on everyone's radar. So our efforts are certainly complementary. We do work with the DLCC. Our political teams do talk on a regular basis. We're often working in state to figure out whose resources are going where and to be as effective as possible together. But again, also do see those places where we're able to make some slightly different investments. Again, when I described the scale of our investment, there were some chambers in 2022 that the DL did not think were necessarily going to be flippable, like the Pennsylvania House, where we saw an opportunity and went for it. So different priorities, different strategy, I would say, though certainly an aligned goal around building power in states. On the partner side, I will say, we work with a number of national partners on issues ranging from protecting democracy to national issue-focused organizations as we continue to build out our suite of model policies and tools for lawmakers. We're regularly talking to climate groups that work on healthcare, groups that work on mental health. There's a broad set of issues that we are looking to learn and bring the best ideas from other organizations into our work. And then at the state level, we do have some relationships in state with groups that work on voter mobilization or direct candidate support, or candidate recruitment is a big one. But also a lot of that work is really led by our in-state partners. We have an entity that we do our spending through in every state. And so they often hold the relationships, and we're working to counsel them and help them think about how to best leverage those on-the-ground groups so that it really is driven by folks in state. Tia, anything you would add on the Giving Circles partner end?
So on the Giving Circles end, we actually are a partner with Philanthropy Together, and this is a group that convenes Giving Circles, typically on the 501c3 side. But it's been a very rewarding table to sort of be a part of, as we've gotten to partner with giving circles from all different issue areas. And we've gotten to learn more about how folks are engaging their networks, engaging their friends and their families around the country, I mean, really around the world, as Philanthropy Together actually has several partners that are international as well. And then we're also working this year to set up a phone bank, partnering again with Sister District, who we had worked with last year on phone banking and opportunities for giving circles to be able to do phone banking and texting, in addition to building power within their circles as well.
I think that's such an interesting point to make sure everybody knows that the giving circles offer these opportunities to take action, also give money and also do things. Just a couple more. I think we're rolling out through the list of all these great questions. This is kind of a big one about sort of the system of federalism and how federal laws intersect, or why state, well, the question, basically says, with the greater fluidity of movement of people across the country, why wouldn't federal legislation be more impactful than state legislation? I'm guessing it's a both and sort of thing, but you guys, how would you answer that question?
I mean, again, Congress passed 30 policies in 2023. Michigan, the state of Michigan, only passed 320, right? So part of what we believe, and the other thing I should say is, again, the shift that we have seen, particularly from the Supreme Court, not just the Dobbs decision, but also decisions like Sackett, which really mean that wetlands protection and a number of other climate-related policies, the recent Loper-Bright decision, the federal government is shifting more and more to saying, we're not going to make a decision here, we're not going to regulate this, it is going to the states. So whether we think that is the way that we should be moving as a country or not, it is the reality. And what that means, we describe it as we've got basically 50 little mini Congresses across the country, right? In every state, we have these state legislatures that have incredible power to pass policies that are either going to really improve or really make people's lives a lot worse. And so I would say in a lot of ways, we're responding to that trend, which is that more and more power is being shifted to the states. More and more issues can be legislated at the state level. And that means that, again, we need not only the power in states, but the policy ideas, the leaders who are willing to take big, bold policy ideas and move on them. All of that is just becoming a reality, that because we're not seeing more happen at the federal level, because there is this shift to state power, there's then a question of, do you want that power being used for good or for evil? And we're trying to use it for good. Tia, what else would you say?
I would also say, and especially if you're sort of thinking about why should I get involved in X state if I live in Y state, the thing is that many of the policies that end up becoming federal policy start in the states. So healthcare, the Affordable Care Act, that was Romney Care in Massachusetts before it became the Affordable Care Act at the federal level. Marriage equality went from state to state to state before it became federal. And the decision that led to the Dobbs decision, the law was based on a Mississippi law, and so we really need to be having our eyes on the states when it comes to policy, because the policy that gets decided in the states might end up becoming policy that is policy for all of us as well.
Last question. It's, a specific one. If you have a position on being in favor or not of solely financing elections with taxpayer money at the state level, which then would close out the dark money. Is that something you guys think about and would be in favor of?
So again, we do have a model policy library, and I know my colleague Rachel has helpfully been dropping in some links as we go here, so maybe we can drop that one in. We do think that, again, when we look at what state lawmakers can do, campaign finance reform is a piece of that, regulating the kinds of money that are spent in elections, the amount of money being spent in elections. We actually work in some states right now that are clean election states like Maine. So we do have some model policies that we work with lawmakers to consider in their own states in terms of the kinds of restrictions that may make sense. Again, I think this is one of those places where right now there is just so much money in politics, and part of what we're doing, part of what we have found we need to be able to be competitive in state legislative races is essentially spend at parity with the right wing. And so I am not personally taking a position on where those sources of money should come from. We do think that is a decision state lawmakers should make, and we do offer them a variety of model policies to think about the kinds of changes to campaign finance that could make sense in their particular state context.
Amazing. And I'll just say,
So
Tia, with the Giving Circle, which I'm just such a fan of, you know,
I just
giving
spent an
at the-
hour listening to
at
states
the
project.
bottom, you know, or at the local and state level through the states project Giving Circle filters up through. So you don't have to be the $1 million donor at the presidential level. You can give a very meaningful amount at a Giving Circle level that gets people door knocking on on the ticket that you are trying to support a ballot. Thank you all so much, Tia Mandara. This was really energizing and super informative, and I hope everybody felt the same and got great information. And check out the website. Everything you want is on there. So thanks so much. Have a great afternoon.